All right. Welcome everyone to my session, Coder Coach Catalyst, using questions to make people grow. So when you leave here today, you're going to get a simple formula that you can use to both make the people around you grow, but also to stop taking on more work and actually offload a lot of things that you've been having going on for you. Now, the trick with this formula is that even if it's really simple, and I'm going to give it here to you today, it's not going to work unless you actually go out there and apply it. Because this talk is not about you, it's actually more about the people around you. So what we're going to go through today is 1 skill, 3 formats, and 5 questions. That's the basic layout for this talk. Now, my name is Martin Mazur. I'm a consultant coach and speaker, and I have over 20 years of experience in the industry, and today I work with helping bridging the gap between business and tech, and I do a lot of coaching of both individuals and organizations. So let's jump into this. Now, how many here feel like you're the hero in your organization? Yeah. Sometimes, it's a nice feeling, right? Like people come to you with things, there's things you can fix. The PMs always come to you with those very urgent fixes that need to get done. Your colleagues ask you for help. And it's nice being the hero, but it's also quite problematic. So just how many here code every day? All right, how many here code every week? And how many are here just because it's the leadership and management track and have anything else to go to? All right. This talk might not be for you. But it's nice being the hero, right? The problem with being the hero is if you think about all the superhero movie, what happens to the citizens in the cities where the heroes work, right? The citizens don't have agency to fix their own problems. Like Commissioner Gordon and Batman, the police force has no power in Gotham. Like if Batman goes away, the whole city turns into chaos. But that's only one person, right? So being the hero is nice until your product becomes successful or your organization scales or whatever you're doing starts growing. Because then you turn into the villain. Because all of a sudden, you're not getting things out. You're not helping people. You're holding them back. You become that person that they go like, oh, I gave them something 2 months ago and still nothing has happened. Like when I go to them, they just have snarky comments. They're really unpleasant to be around. I can't even find a meeting slot in their agenda. And this is a quote from Harvey Dent, which is very fitting. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. So in our context, what that would mean is basically you either burn out because you're now overloaded with work, everything depends on you, or you become snarky and nobody wants to talk to you anymore. And when I go into organizations and I look at these things, a lot of the people that used to be heroes, they turn to the real dark side. And this is when they still think that they are better than everybody else. They go like, nobody else here can do anything. I'm surrounded by complete idiots. Like, how can nobody figure this stuff out? And you go into the commit history and the core of the code base, and the only thing you see is their name. Because they've now built a walled garden where nobody else dares to touch anything and nobody else dares to enter. So it is in part their fault. There is a solution to this, and this is what this talk is about. This is what I'm going to try to help you with. Before you become the villain, I'm going to help you solve these issues. Now, a lot of the people, before they become the villain or when they became the villain, they realize their mistake. They realize that this is going nowhere. So they ask for help. They go where you usually go for help, to their manager or leader. And I've done this before. I've been in this situation and I go to my manager and leader. And one of the few things you can hear is, well, you just say no to things. Sure, that's easy. Or you need to delegate more. What is that word even, delegate? Is that like a coding thing? You need to set clear boundaries. You need to protect your time. Don't take on others' work. Yeah, that's easy for you to say. I love this one. This is a real one. Somebody actually said this to me. Like, have you tried just not caring so much? Like, it should be, everything would be easier then. Simply clone yourself. Like everybody that's worked with me at my previous employer knows that there was a running joke. Like, we just want to clone Martin. It seems funny, but it's not. Just tell everyone you're busy. I haven't tried that. Now, for me, when this happened, I thought I had one problem because I thought it was a me problem. All of those comments and everything, they point towards one direction. This is something I can fix. If I just find the right skill or the right management thing or the right tools or whatever thing, I can fix this. But the thing here is, this is not one problem. You actually have two problems when you've ended up in this situation. One problem is the obvious one. It's the you problem. You're the bottleneck. You're preventing work from getting done. But the second problem, which is the more severe one, is the they problem or them problem. Because you've also created a situation where nobody around you has had any chance to grow and to learn anything. So by now, you're the only person that can fix it. By playing the hero, you've actually created a city where the police force has no agency. So these are the two problems we're going to be addressing in today's talk. And the way we're going to be doing it is I'm going to introduce you to very basic coaching skills that you're going to be able to deploy as soon as you exit this room. So this is not something you're going to have to train or go a course in. I'm going to give you things that you can immediately use. Now, let's just clarify what I mean when I say coaching. I mean helping others discover solutions, over solving problems for others, asking good questions over giving answers, focusing on the person rather than focusing on the problem, long-term growth over immediate outcomes. And lastly, adapting to others' needs over using a one-size-fits-all approach. Now, this last one is really important because as you go through this talk, you might think at one point it's like, well, hold on, he's giving us a one-size-fits-all approach to all of this stuff he's been talking about. That's not what I'm doing. What you should view the content of this talk more as a starter kit. It's a starter pack. You can take this now and you can start reshaping it, rebuilding it, remodeling it to fit your own style, your own working environment, and the people around you. So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution, but it's a good place to start if you've never tried coaching before. So, as I told you in introduction, we're going to talk about one skill, 3 formats, and 5 questions, and that's everything you need to get started. The one skill, and it's probably the most important point of this talk, is active listening. Now, active listening, summarized in one sentence, is actually listening to what the person in front of you has to say instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Or, in coaching context, waiting for your turn to pose a question, right? Now, there's different elements to this. It becomes more complex, but what you really want to do is you want to find yourself in a state where you're present and you're actually paying attention to what is being said, both what is being said explicitly and implicitly. And implicitly, what we mean is we look at facial expressions, body language, we try to read emotional cues. So we can figure out, what are all the words not being said when somebody's communicating something. We avoid distractions. We don't look at our watch. We don't take out our phones. We don't look away. We try to keep an eye contact with the person we're listening to. We stay calm and compassionate throughout the conversation. We avoid big emotional displays, and we try to really understand what the person is communicating with us. Now, just as the other person's body gestures and facial expressions are important, so are our own. So we try to have a body language which is welcoming and mirroring of that of the person. If they're feeling sad, we try to mirror that type of expression. And we also use small, brief affirmations cues. Yeah, I understand. I can see where that's coming from. In order to communicate that we are, in fact, listening to the person. And lastly, what we can also do in order to communicate the active listening is we summarize what somebody is saying and we feed it back to them. Now, this serves two purposes. First, we check in that, this is what I heard you say. Is this in fact what you meant? And the person we're listening to can correct us in case we misheard or misunderstood something. And secondly, since we are retelling them what they just told us, that confirms for them that, yes, in fact, I've been listening, I've understood, I know what's going on. Now, there's no shortcut to active listening. I mean, active listening is a little bit like meditation. You have to practice it, you have to try it, and then when your mind wanders, you come back to the conversation, come back to the person. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. There is an exercise which I'm not going to do here today because one, we don't really have time for it, and two, there's way too many people in this room, but it's coached like a 5-year-old. I have my daughter here, she's 6, she's an expert on this exercise. Basically, the reason this exercise works is because it gives you the 3 questions you're allowed to ask: why, what, and how. So you can actively listen to the person talking as you're coaching them, and you don't have to think about what the next question is I'm going to say. Now, this is not by any means like a real coaching session because it doesn't solve anything. It's based on the 5 whys, which is a technique for digging deeper into a problem, a root cause analysis. So basically, this exposes the problem, but it doesn't give you any solutions. But it's a cool exercise to do. If you scan the QR code, you can get the PDF of the exercise if you want to use it at your workplace or anything later on. Now, let's jump to the coaching formats. I'm going to go through these really quickly because they're not really that relevant, but they're relevant for us understanding what we mean when we talk about coaching. Because when most people hear coaching that haven't been exposed to coaching, what they think about is formal coaching. Now, formal coaching is we have a coach and coachee type of relationship that we're in. We're 2 people. We have set out sessions every week or every second week. We sit for 1 hour. The coachee talks about some issue that they have, and the coach tries to help them through this issue. Usually we work with something over a longer period of time, like 6, 9, 10 months, and we come back to the issue. Like the actual coaching sessions have a memory. We check in, how did it go? What has happened since last time? So when people say, I want to coach or I want to be a coach, usually they think they want to work with this. Now, formal coaching is nice and it's useful, but it's usually not useful for you as a software developer, because unless you have juniors or apprentices that you feel specifically have a high level of potential and you want to give them something extra, you won't set up formal coaching agreements. And this type of coaching does require a coaching agreement because we're going into a partnership. You have to be okay with me coaching you, and I have to be okay with being your coach. So there's a formal agreement involved in order to do this. The techniques I'm going to discuss today will work in a formal coaching environment, but this is not what's going to offload your work from whatever you're doing. What is going to offload your work is the impromptu coaching or situational coaching or on-the-go coaching. Now, what this is basically coaching in everyday situations, by the coffee machine or at the lunch table, or when somebody shows up with a problem at your desk or in a meeting. This is the coaching where we can deploy coaching techniques at any time, anywhere. And this is the type of coaching that stops you from taking on more work than you can handle. This is the type of coaching that helps others around you grow so that they can rise to the occasion and solve their own problems instead of you taking on their problems and trying to solve everything for them. And this also doesn't require any type of agreement. I can coach anyone without them even knowing about it because it happens in a conversation. So this is what we're mostly going to be talking about today. Now, the last format I just briefly want to touch about is team coaching. And this is also really fun, and this can be both formal and impromptu. The difference is you work with a whole team. So when we talk about organizational coaching or agile coaching, usually what we mean is this. So in this situation, you don't coach one-to-one, you coach a whole group of people. Now, the same type of techniques, the same type of questions we're going to talk about apply, and you can use them all in this type of situation. However, it becomes more complex because you're going to have conflicts, you're going to have people fighting each other, you're going to have a lot of feelings to manage. So you also need to use some facilitation skills and conflict resolution skills in order to make this work and be able to switch between all three of those. If you've never coached, don't start here. You're in for a world of pain. So let's talk about the 5 questions. Now, this is the meat of this whole presentation. This is where, you're going to get the things that you can actually take with you and you can start using immediately. So the way this is structured is there's 5 questions, but they also go through 5 different phases. It's the initiation phase, which is the way you drop into a coaching conversation. Then there's the excavation or exploration phase, which is where we open up the problem and try to figure out what's actually going on. And then we refocus that into something that is actually solvable. We look at the options, what different types of options are there for this individual being coached, and then we push them to take an action and create some accountability around that. All right? Now, in this presentation, all of these questions and phases follow each other really neatly because I've orchestrated it to be very perfect. In reality, that's not how it's going to happen. You're going to jump back and forth and get lost. But if you know about this framework or this type of road you're supposed to be on, you can always find your way back into the conversation in order to steer yourself out into the action thing. So let's jump into the first question. I'm going to use 2 fictional characters here to show you how this works in practice. They're Taylor, who is the tech lead, and Sam, who is a senior software developer. So an initiation question is basically the question that gets you started with a coaching conversation. Here I've picked what's on your mind, but there's other questions as well. There's questions like what's up, or what do you think? If I want to know, I've built something, or like, hey, what do you think about this glass? That's also an initiation question. Now, things to avoid are emotionally loaded questions for initiation. Things like, how are you feeling? Are you all right? Is everything okay? Those are typically bad questions because they're going to end you in a conversation that you probably won't be able to solve. Still good questions to ask people around you, just not for coaching purposes. There's a typical how are you thing, which was always going to be answered with good. So things that you can answer with good, bad, yes, no are also very bad initiation questions. So stay clear of those. And then there's another category of bad initiation questions, which is status questions. And specifically, if you're a tech lead, CTO, or some type of manager, you want to stay clear of any type of question that can be perceived as you're checking in the status of the work being done. And these might be questions like, how's it going, or do you have any problems, right? So that can be perceived as you're checking in with someone on how the work is going. So let's look at our fictional scenario. So here we have Sam walks in and goes like, hey, Taylor, got a minute? So already we know something's up. And we drop the initiation question. Hey, Sam, what's on your mind? And Sam starts offloading. They're feeling the crunch. There's a lot with this new feature. We keep getting last minute changes from the PMs. They're worried they won't make the deadline. And can you help? We've all had this conversation with someone. And what happens is we go like, sure, I can help. Show me what you're working on. I can take this part. You can take that part. And all of a sudden, you just got more work. Let's try not to take on more work and see if we can navigate this situation without actually taking on more things for ourselves. So the next thing we need to do is we need to understand this problem fully, because what they told us in this specific situation probably isn't the full spectra of what we're dealing with. So we need to excavate or explore. We need to dig deeper into the problem to understand what's going on. The first thing people say is very rarely the real problem that they're dealing with. So this question, and what else, or permutations of that question, are very good to use. This is not the best way of exploration or excavation. The best way of exploration or excavation is actually to... The problem is that that's really hard to do, specifically if you're new to coaching, because awkward silences are really awkward. So use this one because it's the next best thing to do. This is a question that you can also repeat, and you can use it as many times as you want until you think you've discovered something that is worthwhile pursuing. And there's no such thing as using this question too many times. If you use it too many times, you go on a detour. We have another question for that coming later up called the focus question. So we're going to solve that problem if you end up in a situation where you don't want to be. So let's try the excavation question. All right, sounds like there's a lot to handle. And what else is going on? Sam continues offloading. So now here we have some new discovery. Every time I think I'm done, there's a new change request coming, and it's like I can't keep up and I'm getting worn out. So we see this is really a personal problem for Sam as well. They're not feeling very well. They're getting worn out. So we continue because there's probably something deeper. I get that. And what else? Well, actually, I guess part of the problem is, see, here it comes. I haven't been pushing back on the changes. So they knew what they were supposed to do, but haven't been doing it. Why haven't they been doing it? You know, I just joined the team. I'm saying yes because I don't want the product team to feel like I'm being difficult. So they don't want to be the difficult person. Now, you see here again, Sam is building up to becoming a hero. Normally, if this was a real situation, I don't believe we're at the bottom of this. I would probably go and what else a couple more times to see, you know, what is actually going on. But for the sake of this presentation, you know, let's continue on. So then we use the focus question. The focus question is once we've opened up, we've explored a lot of stuff going on, we try to bring everything back to a point where we can actually deal with the problem. And the focus question I have here is, what is the real challenge here? And the most important part is for you. If you skip the for you in this question, what happens? What is the real challenge here? We go off the rails and we start discussing, well, you know, the organization and the PMs, and we don't have enough people on this team, and the companies of such and such, and that, and our competitors, and you know, that logging thing keeps crashing. What's the real challenge here for you? Brings it back to the individual that we're coaching. It brings it back to them. So when they answer the question, they think about what is the challenge for me, which then in turn is something that they can actually solve, that they can actually have agency over. So let's go back to our scenario here and ask this question. All right, thanks for sharing that. We affirm, we actively listen. So what's the real challenge here for you? I feel like as part of the team, I should be able to handle everything that comes my way. It feels like everyone else is managing. As the new person, I don't feel comfortable saying no. So this is the real challenge. As the new person on the team, they just don't feel comfortable saying no. All right, we get that. So now comes the difficult part, because usually what happens once you've tried these questions, you come to this, you really just want to give advice. Now you really just want to take the person and say, you know what, you shouldn't worry about being the new person. You know, you've got this. It's okay to say no. Nobody's going to judge you. That's what you would normally do, right? But that means you're solving their problem for them. They haven't discovered the solution on their own. Hence, if that then goes wrong, they're going to be like, well, you know, that was Taylor or Martin told me to do that, so I don't know why it went wrong. So this is why we want people to discover the solutions on their own, because then they own the solution, and if it goes wrong, then they are then empowered to seek another solution. So instead of giving advice or jumping in or taking over, what we want to do is option questions. And we do option questions to figure out what is the status of this situation, what has happened so far, what has happened before in similar situations, what type of resources do we have to play with, what's the wiggle room, what could we possibly try. Option questions aren't really one question. Unfortunately, there are a battery of questions all in this type of style. What have you tried so far? What has worked in this scenario before? What type of resources do you have that you think could help? And what else is also a good question to use here. So we go in for the option questions here. That's understandable. What have you tried so far? I've been working long hours to stay on top of things. I've tried to creating a list of prioritized tasks, but I end up saying yes to everything anyway. Now you see why this is important, because it might be very tempting to tell them you should just create a list of prioritized things and work from that. And a person might be like, yeah, sure, and take that advice and go away somewhere else and cry in a corner because they've already tried it. So it's really important to seek out and see, what have they already tried before we jump into solutions. And next thing here, in similar situations, when you felt overwhelmed, what's worked before? All right, here's something that worked before, checking with the team to see which parts were really needed, but, I'm worried about disappointing people again. But we're getting somewhere, so let's dig deeper. Let's see what else we can do. That makes sense. We affirm again. We're actively listening. What resources or support do you have that could help? All right. I suppose I could clarify the priorities with the product team and maybe let them know that I'm under pressure, but I'm not sure how to start that conversation. This is progress, because now they see something they can actually do. They see something which might actually solve the problem, but they're just not sure where to start. This we can work with. And the way we work with that is we use action questions. Action questions are specifically designed in order to push people to create action, create momentum, and do things. You can also pair this together with accountability questions. So typical action questions is, what are you going to do about it? What is the next step? What will you do when you leave here for formal coaching sessions, for instance? But there was also questions like, what do you want from me? I try to avoid that in impromptu coaching, because then somebody goes like, I just want you to take the problem off my hands. And then you have to say no to that. The accountability questions are more, when are you going to do that? When are you going to book that meeting? Could you check in with me once that is done? Could you send me a text message? For impromptu coaching, I don't do that, but I usually approach the person, say 1 day or 2 days later, and ask, how did it go with the thing we talked about yesterday? So let's see what happens here. All right, that's a good starting point. So what's one step you feel comfortable with taking to get that conversation going? See, they say they're not comfortable, so we say, like, what do you feel comfortable with? Well, I think I could reach out to the product lead. I could ask for sync priorities, maybe frame it like this and that. They're being vague, but we're okay with that. They're saying, they will talk with them. They're going to tell them what the impact is on their work, make sure that the product team understands the trade-offs. That's a good idea. And when are you going to set that up? Here we create the accountability. I'll send the message by the end of the day to schedule time with them. All right, I'm happy. We're good. Great, let me know if you need any support. And remember, it's completely okay to clarify priorities, keep a realistic workload. You're doing a great job with balancing everything. Again, here we go back over the conversation. We say it's completely okay to feel like this. What you're doing is okay. You're doing a good job. When you end up in this situation as a coach, specifically when you're new to coaching, what you might feel is, I'm not at all happy with how this conversation went. I'm not at all happy with the action. I'm not sure that's going to solve their problem. This is not how I would have done it personally. And you're tempted to go and adjust what you just agreed on. Don't. You are not them, right? They will fix the problem the way that works for them. They can't fix the problem the way you want it to be fixed. So whatever they came up with, even if you think that's not the greatest solution or that's not how you would have done it, that's the right outcome from the conversation. So you need to find acceptance with that. You need to find a way where you're okay with letting people do those things. And if it fails, they are going to be empowered to seek a new solution. If it succeeds, they're going to feel really proud of themselves for being able to figure this out and taking the steps. Now, the best thing with impromptu coaching like this is if you do it often and you do it well, and you want to get into formal coaching, the people you impromptu coach will ask you, like, hey, I've had a lot of value from our conversations. Now, would you want to be my coach? And then you can say yes, and then you might have your first formal coaching agreement. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about another type of way to use questions. And this is questions we can use for decisions and advice. Now, it's kind of similar to what we've been talking about so far, but there's a distinct difference here, because when we talk about decisions and advice, when people come to us for decisions and advice, what we need to give them, what we need to leave them with, is some heuristics. That means rules of thumb that they can apply in these situations to figure out the problem on their own the next time. Now, heuristics are, for instance, like if you look at the Agile Manifesto, it's all heuristics. We have people and interactions over processes and tools. So whenever somebody inside of Agile is confused about how to prioritize things, you can always look at those. The US military uses heuristics for when they get stuck between enemy lines. Then they use things like, I think the heuristic there is keep moving, seek the high ground, and stay in touch. Because you never know how the situation is going to look, so you need these type of quick ways of figuring things out. So when somebody comes for you for decisions and advice, that what they're actually saying is, I don't have a heuristic for this. I don't have a way to answer this question. Now, the easiest way to do that, the least problematic way for you to solve that, is to basically give them the answer, but then they're going to come to you and ask again. So, hey, Taylor, got a minute? Yeah, Sam, what's on your mind? Here's an initiation question. Here comes the ask. Which framework should we use for our next project, React or Vue? Now, people here might be opinionated. People might already know which one they prefer, but this is not the exercise. The easiest way to get out of this at zero cost for yourself is just tell them which one to use. But that way, the next time they need to pick something, they're going to come to you again. So you've actually haven't solved anything for them. You've solved the you problem, you haven't solved the them problem. What you want to do here is you want to ask what heuristics they already have. So what criteria do you think are important when choosing a framework? I don't know, maybe ease of use. There we go. And what else? Community support and resources, I guess. All right, we continue. Anything else? I don't know. I can't come up with anything more. This is your cue to jump in. When this happens, you fill the list of heuristics that they've missed. You fill the list of criteria that they've missed and go like, for this project, I would also consider scalability and always check the licensing. All right, that's good. And so they go like, of course, thank you so much. And then you check back in. So now we have ease of use, community support, scalability, and licensing. Can you get all that information? Now, you might already have all that information, but this isn't about you giving them the information. It's about them learning how to find it on their own. Do you think you can get all that information? Yeah, it should be easy, right? You can probably just go online and figure that stuff out. Will you be able to make the decision based on those criteria? So we double check. If you have this, is that enough for you to decide on a framework? I think so. Thank you. So this way, we also coach people in order to help them make better decisions in similar situations further on. Now, hopefully this person is not going to come back to us with similar questions again, because the next time they have a question like this, they're going to think back to this conversation and go like, hey, wait a minute, I know how to answer this type of questions. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today before we sum up is who you can coach. Right now, we've been talking about a relationship of a tech lead and a senior developer having a discussion about things. But the fact is, you can actually coach anyone. You can coach people about things you have no clue about. Because the whole process is not based on you being an expert. It does help if you understand what the person is talking about. It's very nice to have some context or understanding of their space, but the actual questions and the actual methods we talked about today will work even if you understand nothing about their domain. So this means you can do peer coaching, meaning you can coach people on the same level as you, or you can do coach upwards, meaning you can coach your managers, CEOs, board members, whoever. The problem with doing that type of coaching is that these people rarely will come to you with questions and advice. So it's really hard to initiate a coaching conversations with them. So for peer coaching or coaching upwards, you might need to ask permission. So for this, we have a permission question. One permission question you can use is, would you be open to talking through this? And here we have a fictional scenario where the CEO of the company Taylor works for is actually having a little bit of a problem. So the CEO addresses the whole team and says, I'm going into a big meeting with the board later this week to secure funding for our product division. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how to frame it, but don't worry, I'll figure something out. So this is a nice CEO. They're being really transparent with the team, yet they're not burdening the team with their problems, and they're saying, I'll figure it out on my own. You shouldn't worry about it. However, Taylor really wants to help in this situation, so this is where we pop the permission question. Would you be open to talking through this? I might have a few questions that could provide some perspective. So this is a really nice way of asking permission to go into a coaching conversation. I wouldn't do this in the meeting. I would probably do this afterwards in a one-on-one situation, specifically with a CEO or a senior leader, so they don't feel jumped and want to, reaffirm their kind of status by saying, no, I don't need any help. But in this situation, they go like, yeah, sure, can you do it tonight? We could order some food and eat while we talk. Now, this often happens, and if you're really serious about offering help, you should jump on this opportunity. Understand that not everybody wants to work, evenings and maybe weekends and stuff like that, but this CEO also has a family and also has a private life, and they're suggesting this time because it's probably the only time that works for them. So if you're serious about helping them, you would say, sounds great, let's do it. So we're approaching the end of this. So I just want to summarize what we've been talking about. The most important thing, if nothing else, active listening. Take that with you. Practice it. Listen to people actively. You can listen to your family actively, to your colleagues. When your mind wanders, bring it back to listening. Mirror their type of behavior, their emotions. Use body language, facial expressions. Also listen for the things that haven't been said. 3 different types of formats. We have formal coaching, which is the type of coaching people mostly think about. Then we have impromptu or situational coaching, which is the most useful to you and to most people. And then team coaching, which is really nice if you're working as more of an agile coach or organizational coach, but then you probably already know all of this stuff. The different questions or phases we talked about is initiation questions, excavation questions, focus questions, bringing the problem into something we can solve, and option questions, creating different types of solutions, figuring out what we have tried so far, and then finally creating an action. So that's it. I mean, this is everything you need. This is your starter kit for getting going with this type of work. And if you really want to read a great book where I stole probably 50% of this presentation from, you should read The Coaching Habit, because half of the questions are from there, the other half is from my own experience. But The Coaching Habit has been a book that's helped me a lot throughout my career, and I'm sure it's going to help you as well. Questions are more transforming than answers. The skill is getting the questions right. That's it for me. Thank you so much for listening. And what are your questions? Good. I've solved everybody's problem. Thank you so much.